Hello, Luis. We're going to look at your 5 characteristics posting here. So let's go ahead and share and get a look. So I'm going to go through first just the posting itself, just to kind of take a look, see if everything kind of worked out right for you in terms of getting it on the blog. Looks like we got temperature, contrast, good, hardness. So it looks like you have everything up there. I'm seeing some duplicate images here. Well, I'll talk about that in a little bit, but anyway, so direction. Well, all of the 5 characteristics are important. In terms of understanding how light works and how it interacts with photography, to know your medium is really to understand all of the options that you have available to you to create. If you were working with a certain type of stone in sculpture, it would be helpful if you knew the characteristics of that stone so that you would know what kind of tools to use to shape it and what type of materials will dissolve it and so on and so forth. So with light, you want to know its characteristics as well, how to use it, how to manipulate it, how to control it to your advantage. So these 5 characteristics are in relationship to photography, and direction, being the first of the ones that we look at, is actually the first one that we consider in all of our photographs, because it establishes the key light, the main light source in our photograph. And so when it does this, the main light source in our photograph, it says where the shadows are going to be coming from, the direction that those shadows are happening on. It can influence the kind of emotional quality of the photograph. It tells the viewer, in a way, what time is it? Even if it's artificial light, it indicates a sort of simulation of time, because we know that as the sun moves around the as the Earth moves around the sun, and from our perspective, as the sun is moving across the sky, the light changes, the shadow patterns change. They get longer, they are shorter, they're more harsh, they're less harsh, they are softer. We simulate that in the studio, and the viewer, when they're looking at a photograph, will equate those things, whether they know where they're doing that or not. So direction is very important in terms of establishing all of those things, even more so than the others. The others follow suit; they follow after that. So we obviously can't decide whether we're going to diffuse a key light or not until we have the key light. So direction is the first thing, and that's why we address it. And really just moving around the table in the way that we did gives us this sort of perspective on these options. And we didn't go up and down, and because that's a little bit of a different consideration that we'll get into later. But this idea of moving around, this sort of compass that we called it, and gives you these sort of reference points to sort of look at. And even though we have these marker points, it doesn't mean that you can't go in between those. That doesn't mean that. It just means that we have these marker points, and you could say it's in between 2 and 3, or 4 and 6, or whatever it happens to be. So we also want to consider in these projects that we shoot the compositions. All of the composition is with photography. All composition in photography is a subtractive process. The subtractive process means that when you put the camera to your subject, that you're seeing all of the things all at one time, which is not what you do when you make a drawing. When you do drawing, you make a mark on the page, and then you make another mark, and you make another mark. That's additive. You're adding things to it. And so you're building slowly the composition. You're building it up. With photography, you point it at whatever it is. You look at the viewfinder, and everything is there. And so your brain must do reducing. as an activity instead of adding. Your brain and your eyes must kind of think, what doesn't need to be here, rather than what does. And so it's a different process, and it takes some getting used to. So that's something that we'll go over again. It looks like the first few, you are sort of following what that first tip that I was giving everybody, and that is allowing an object to run off the top and the bottom, at least one of them, on the compositions. And it looks here that we didn't move the composition from position 2, 1, 2, and 3, which that's not what we want to work at. We definitely want to move the composition around as we are moving the lights from each composition. We want to explore all over the place. You have the freedom to try out a lot of different things. The other is, these are unfortunately not what you are identifying them as. You have them identified as the wrong position. All of these appear to be position number 3. There is looks like a supplemental light over on the side here. Right here, there's definitely another light source creating this light right here, because this light's coming from here. It definitely can't wrap all the way around for that. I'm not sure where this light's coming from, whether it's coming from a neighboring table. It shouldn't be, because all the tables are blocked off. So this may be actually from the wrong, or from some other exercise that we were doing, and then you maybe misidentified it as this must be the direction one, because this is the images that you've posted up here are not. This is not position 1 or 2. This is position 3, but we have 2 lights here. There should only be 1 light here, and then we still have position 3, where it's just coming from the side. So we'll want to kind of talk a little bit more about that. Position 5 is supposed to be coming from the back. So it looks like this kind of tripped you up a little bit, and that's okay. When things kind of don't work out, they don't work out. That's not everybody's going to get this, right away. This isn't easy stuff. Even though we're presenting it very sort of carefully and bit by bit, it's still not something that, we just automatically expect everybody to just immediately understand. It's why you're in the course, is to figure stuff out. And when stuff isn't immediately apparent, we work on it. So let's work on it. So we'll get together. Approach me, please, in class, and we will figure out what went wrong for you here, and I'll talk to you about where you can make all these corrections and so on, to get it the way that you want it to look, and which is presumably the way that the project was outlined, because you'll want to be able to take a look at an objective and be able to kind of intend to go into that direction. And this is such an important project, these 5 characteristics, that I don't want to leave that behind. We can't leave that behind for you, because it's too important to let that go. So we'll work on that. And I definitely don't want you to feel alarmed, because built into the class, that's what we do, is we have these resubmissions. So that's what it's all about. Again, we do have the same compositional setup here 3 times. We want to avoid that. Sometimes, in some cases, we may have projects that have you doing the same composition over and over with variations of something. But that'll be very specifically laid out for you. It'll say, do this and don't move anything, and just move 1 element or something like that. But only if we have it set up that way. Otherwise, we definitely want you to explore all kinds of different possibilities, compositions and different arrangements. Even with just bottles, we really want you to be moving stuff around. And it does seem like you didn't quite get that point, because we have a lot of duplications here. We also have the intensity here, 1 to 4, 1 to 3, yet it appears that we have one light source in a lot of these. So we may have just mixed up some things. I'm not sure. Maybe you had a lot of photographs on your card, and we had, you had a hard time like figuring out which was which, and that can happen as well, when you're just shooting away and you forget like to go, well, which ones are which images, and so that can happen too. And again, that's fine. Each time you sort of misstep something, it's just a learning opportunity. You figure it out. We've all done those kinds of things. So, I don't want you to think that you already have to know stuff. That's I guess the point that I'm trying to get at, that just because you don't know something doesn't mean that it's wrong. You have to work at it sometimes. So I like what you're doing in terms of the variations of color here. You certainly were able to manage to eke out the blues and the warm tones and things like that. Again, we'll overlook the same compositions, although we do want that to change. Contrast, where we're using the reflective. Yeah, it's difficult to see whether you're getting those. I'm not sure that you have these all ordered right. That may just be where you are, where you just didn't quite get them in the right order on that. So I don't want you to worry too much about this in terms of like, oh my gosh, am I gonna like fail or something like that? You can't fail. This is your interpretation of these exercises. However, we have to get the sort of techniques right. The images themselves, how they look, that's your interpretation. But we do want to get the technique right. We do want to make sure that you understand the principles and things like that, because that is an important part of the experiment, and that is something that is really important so that you can grow in either your photography or in other things. These principles roll over into a lot of other mediums. So please approach me in the class, and we'll talk more about what you can do to kind of revisit these things and kind of get it kind of re-put together and back to me, and we'll talk about that, how you can do that and get that done. All right, we'll talk later. Okay, bye now.